The Chapter 4 test comes in two parts. Graphing calculator part, which deals with these things, determining if something is a function or not, graphing functions given f of x, evaluating functions, and then questions from other material. And then the non-graphing calculator part will be to write a function given the graph, dealing with x squared, absolute value of x, the square root of x, and the square root of 1 minus x squared. As you recall, x squared is a parabola, absolute value is a v, square root of x is that, and the square root of 1 minus x squared would be a circle, or it's a half circle depending on which part. If this is plus and minus, it's the full thing. If it's positive, it's the top half. If it's minus, it's the bottom half. Then you'll also have to evaluate functions, solve some equations, and then graph some functions. And so we'll look at both parts here in this. Starting with, is it a function or not? This first one would be yes, it is, because there's no vertical line that you can draw through it and hit it in more than one place. Or because a function, each x has one and only one y, and that's the case throughout the whole thing. Looking at this second one over here, this one, that is also a function. This dot point and that one, yes, they are on top of each other if you draw a vertical line, but it does not hit this one because it's an open circle here, which means it doesn't include that point. Then the next one here, this is a no, because a vertical line right there would hit it there and there, which cannot happen for it to be a function. Also have to look at maybe a table of values, and in this case here, this one is a yes, it is a function because each x has one and only one y. They happen to all be the same one, but that doesn't matter because you have a coordinate. If you look at this, coordinate 0, 1 is here, 8, 1 is there, 7, 1 is there, and then negative 5, 1 is here. So no vertical line can hit those in more than one place. This one here would not be a function because 3 goes to 8, and 3 is also supposed to go to negative 2, which cannot happen. And then this last one, 4 goes to 3, 8 goes to 3, 2 goes to a negative 7, and 5 goes to 8. Yes, this is a function. All right, and then if we look at these, and we're going to sketch the graph, given this function here with these coordinates, we're going to apply this to it. So in this case, this 4 tells us we're going to move it up 4 or add to the y's by 4. This right here means we're going to go to the right 3 or add to the x's. And this negative 2 means it's going to flip it and stretch it vertically. Or we are going to take the y's and we're going to multiply y's by a negative 2. And so then if we do all of that, you're going to get a new set of values to plot. And so there are two things happening with the y's. There's multiplying by a negative 2, and there's adding 4. The x's, we are only doing one thing, and that is adding 3. So we will take care of that first. If you add 3 to each one of the x values, a negative 4 plus 3 is a negative 1. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. And 4 plus 3 is 7. Then if you take the y values and multiply by a negative 2, you'd get a negative 4, and then add 4 to get 0. A negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4, plus 4 is 8. 0 times a negative 2 is 0, plus 4 is 4, and the same thing for that one. And so here are our new coordinates for this function. negative 1, 0, 1, 8, 4, 4, and lastly 7, 4. Now the shape should follow the same shape as the green, except this one is flipped, so we're going to have a straight line going from there to there, because that's from here to there. Then we have a curved thing going on, so then this part's going to curve, and then a straight line from there to there. And we are done. Moving on to the next one. Here we have everything on the one side, and so this part right here says we are going up 5, or we're going to add to the y's. This part is going to be right 2, so we're going to add to the x's. And then this 2 is we're going to stretch horizontally by 2. So we're going to take the x's and multiply by 2. And so doing the same thing, the x's, two different things are happening. We're multiplying by 2, and we are adding 2. So if you take a negative 4 times 2, you get a negative 8, plus 2 is a negative 6. Negative 1 times 2 is a negative 2, plus 2 is 0. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. And then the y values, we just have to add 5 to them, so that's 7, 3, 5, and 5. So negative 6, 7, 0, 3, 6, 5, and 12. 5. And this one follows the same path, so it's a straight line from there to there. It's curved to there, and then it's straight from there to there. And there we have that one completed. Next one. Now we have some things on both sides. So first off, on this side, this is dealing with the x stuff. We have to add 3 and multiply by 2. So it's going to stretch it and shift it right to 3. Here with the y's, we are going to subtract 2 and multiply by 3. So we're going to stretch it vertically and move it left 2. And the reason these are the opposite thing that are happening because they're with the variable y, so it's the opposite thing that happens. So doing all of these things, first starting with the x's, multiplying by 2 and adding 3. Negative 8 plus 3 is a negative 5. Negative 4 plus 3 is a negative 1. 2 plus 3 is 5. And 8 plus 3 is 11. Multiply by 3 is 6. Minus 2 is 4. Negative 6 is negative 8. 0 is 2. 0 is 2. And so now we have a negative 5, 4, negative 1, negative 8, 5, 2, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 2. Straight line, curved here, straight line there. And we have it drawn. It's been stretched both ways and shifted a little. All right, then moving on to this, evaluating some functions, and this would go into both parts of the test. So if you have f of a negative 4, you would have a negative 4 squared plus 3, which is equal to 16 plus 3, and that is 19. If you do f composition g of 2, first thing you have to do is figure out what is g of 2. And so that's 1/2 times 2 minus 5, which is 1 minus 5, or a negative 4. And then figure out what is f of negative 4. And a negative 4 squared plus 3 is 19. Now then, if we look at this, h of f of a minus 3, so we have to do a minus 3 goes into our f function, so a minus 3 squared plus 3. And then if we simplify this, this becomes a squared minus 6a plus 9 plus 3, which is then a squared minus 6a plus 12. And now we have to do h of that. Excuse me. So you have the square root of a squared minus 6a plus 12 plus 1. And then that can simplify to the square root of a squared minus 6a plus 13. And here we have g of 7. So the g function is this one. And if we go find 7, there isn't one. So therefore, no solution, because they didn't give us any value. All right, next one here, g of a negative 7, f composition g of a negative 7. So first off, g of a negative 7 is 10. So this becomes 10. So now f of 10 is 7. And that is our answer. Next one is g of a negative 8. G composition g of a negative 8. So first off, g of a negative 8 is 5. So this we know is 5. So now g of 5 is 3. And then we are done. All right, then we're going to get into writing these equations. But now before we do that, just one other thing that could happen is if you're doing this, let's call this the f function, the g function, the h function, the I function, and the j function. If a question said, what is f of 3? Well, then you would have to figure out this. See, here's the f function. F of 3 would be that coordinate right there, which is like 4 1/3. If the question were, what is g of 3? Well, here's 3. The g function is this black one, and so that would be no solution, because this function never goes over there. If you were looking at what's h of 3, well, h of 3 would be that coordinate right there, which would be a negative 4. And if we said, what's I of 3? Well, this just goes from there to there, and that would be a no solution. And same thing with j. There is no value for j of 3. Okay. Those are some other ways you could have to evaluate functions using a graph. All right, so now getting to what this is asking for, writing the equation for each of these. This function is the absolute value of x. Its vertex is right here, which means it's shifted to the left 4 and up 2. So that means you'd have the absolute value of x minus 4 plus 2. Then it also has this being a slope of 1/4. So you can put a 1/4 right there. Or you could put x minus 4 over 4 plus 2. Like so. Either way would be fine. Looking at the green or the black function, which is g. This is the square root of x. And here's where it starts, which is to the left 4 and down 4. So we would have the square root of x minus 4 and then or plus 4 and then minus 4. Now then, this is stretched vertically, because usually it goes over 1 and up 1. This is going over 1 and up 2, so it's got to be a 2 out in front of the whole thing to stretch it. And then it is also flipped over the x or the y-axis, so there has to be a negative sign inside to impact the x part of it. So there's a negative, and then x plus 4, like so. Now we have the correct equation. All right, moving on to the blue one, the h function. This is x squared. And here is our vertex, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up. So it would be x squared plus 6. And since it is also going down, and it's over 1 and down 1, you'd have to put a negative out in front of the whole thing, because it flipped it over the x-axis. That negative, now remember, it's not with the x. It would be like that. Opposite of x squared. All right, now the green one. This is the square root of 1 minus x squared. Now the center of this is right here, which is to the right 6 and down 2. So then if you're going right 6, it would be x minus 6 squared, and then minus 2 on the outside. Square root of 1 minus x minus 6 squared. Now it's stretched 2 this way and it's stretched 2 that way. So you can put a 2 here. And you can also put a divide by and then a 2 there. Or you can just turn that into 4 minus x minus 6 squared minus 2 in the square root, because it's stretched both ways. And then the last one is another one that is a square root of 1 minus x squared. Here is our center, which is, well, let's back up to this other green one first, because we forgot one more thing. It is the bottom half of the circle, so that means there has to be a negative out in front of the whole thing. So it would be like that, because the positive would be the top half. And if you need a full circle, you'd have to have plus and minus. Okay, now to this one. It's the square root of 1 minus x squared again. And here's the center, which is shifted to the right, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So it's going to be x minus, or plus 9. No, minus 9. And it's shifted up none. So then square root of 1 minus x minus 9 squared. And it's stretched vertically 3, so there'd be a 3 out in front. And it would have to be the positive 3 because it's only the top half of the circle. And that would be that one. All right, now solving some equations. So we're trying to get x by itself. First thing you'd have to do here is add 2. And then you would get the square root of x plus 4 squared plus 16 equals 9. Secondly, Get rid of the square root by squaring both sides. So then you have x plus 4 squared plus 16 equals 81. Now we have to get rid of the 16, so we subtract it. And we have x plus 4 squared equals 65. The next thing, you would take the square root of both sides, and then you would have x plus 4 equals plus and minus the square root of 65. And you can leave it as the square root of 65 unless it is something that works out evenly, then you should figure out what the square root is. And then finally subtract 4 to get x equals a negative 4 plus and minus the square root of 65. And typically when you have an answer like that, both of them should work in the original. All right, now moving on to this one. First thing, you would subtract 3. And then you have the square root of 1 minus x plus 2 squared equals 1. Next thing is square both sides. Oop, don't need that anymore. So when you square this, you're going to get 1 minus x plus 2 squared equals 1. Then we're going to subtract 1 and get negative of x plus 2 squared equals 0. Get rid of the negative sign, so it becomes x plus 2 squared still equals 0, because you're just multiplying by a negative 1. And then take the square root, and then you have x plus 2 equals, and the square root of 0 is 0. It's not plus and minus because 0 is not positive, nor is it negative. And then lastly, subtract 2, get x equals a negative 2. All right, solving an absolute value equation, first thing would be subtract 1. Get the absolute value of x plus 2 divided by 3 equals 3. Next, you get rid of the absolute value symbols, and it becomes x plus 2 over 3 equals, and just like with a square, when you get rid of squared, you take the square root and you have positive, negative. When you get rid of absolute value, it becomes plus and minus on the other side. Of course, this number needs to be positive for that to happen, because you couldn't take the absolute value and get a negative number. All right, so now multiply both sides by 3, and you get x plus 2 equals positive and negative 9. And finally, subtract 2, and you'll get x equals negative 11 and 7. Because 9 minus 2 is 7, and a negative 9 minus 2 is a negative 11. All right, and finally, having to sketch the graph of these particular things. This one here, it's the square root of a negative of x plus 2. Square root is this thing. Oh, starts there and goes like that. Now we have to go left 2 and flip over y-axis. So typically it starts here and goes there, and then 4 and 2, like so. Now we have to take this and go left 2 and flip it, which you flip it first. So flip it and then left 2. flip this, and then left 2. And so our graph is going to go like that. And then we are done. Looking at this oddly colored one, it says negative 6 times the square root of 1 minus x minus 7 over 5 squared minus 4. This is a half circle, and it would be the bottom half of the circle. It's going to be that one, where the radius is 1, because it is a negative out here. All right, and so the y values are being stretched by 6, and we're shifting them down 4. The x values are being stretched by 5 and being moved to the right 7. So typically the center is here, but now we're going to take that point and go to the right 7 and down 4. And then we have a half circle that would go like this if the 5 and the negative 6 weren't there, or the 5 and the 6 weren't there. So now we have to stretch it 6 times as tall. So instead of being there, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it would be 5 times as wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's almost like a perfect circle, but it's not. And it kind of will look like one on this particular graph because the viewing window might, or the scale is off on this coordinate plane. All right, moving down to the pink one. We have 3 times the absolute value of x minus 2 plus 1. That's going to be a v. The vertex is going to be to the right 2 and up 1. So right 2 and up 1 is right there. And the 3 then is going to tell us what the slope is. So we go up 1 and over 3 in each direction. I mean up 3 and over 1. And there we have our absolute value equation. Finally, we have a squared equation, which is a parabola going like so, with arrows at the end. So it's x plus 4 squared plus 3, which means it's to the left 4 and up 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our vertex. And then just like with any parabola, it's over 1 and up 1, over 2 and up 4, over 3 and up 9. And same thing this side. 2 and 4, 3 and 9. And so it goes like this. And that would be the entire review for both parts of this Chapter 4 test. Hope you enjoyed and learned something.